I was absolutely knocked. I looked a total apparition. It was not what I'm supposed to look like. It's not going to be what I must be. That this is terrible. I was in a flux of turmoil. It wasn't a penis anymore, but it didn't resemble a vagina either.
It's Women's Month in South Africa, a time to celebrate women, their struggles and their stories. So who better to talk to someone who had to fight twice as hard just to be called a woman? Back in the 1970s in apartheid South Africa, Elise Bishop made history as the first person in the country to undergo full gender reassignment surgery. While society was still figuring out its politics, she was rewriting the rules of identity, at least in South Africa. Her autobiography, Two Lives, Twee Lewens, it's written in Afrikaans, tells that remarkable journey and has just been, and listen to this, has just been named one of the 10 most popular life stories in South Africa of the past century. I find that remarkable. And that's why I wanted her here today, not just as a trailblazer, but as a voice whose story still resonates loudly today. So Elise, let's start there. Congratulations, fantastic. Two Lives, named one of the 10 most popular life stories in South Africa of the past century. Tell me about it.
Well, let me tell you, I'm quite excited about it. I can't imagine that I, as a little boy growing up in the Karoo, would eventually write a book that was acclaimed as much as it is today. But I must just correct you on one point. I wasn't the first operation. I am today the eldest candidate who underwent operations still alive in South Africa. There were, I remember we're speaking of half a century ago that I had the operation done. And there were others before me, but they're not alive anymore. So you must know my little trip to the poplar trees in the graveyard is not very far away.
Yeah. So just help me out here, Elise. If we talk about these transition, these operations, when was the first operation then indeed done in South Africa? Yours, you take us back to the 70s.
Yeah,
so
70s.
Just give me a little bit the history of South Africa in terms of these operations.
Well, initially, before transsexualism as such became the big story of the day, it was plain gay people who wanted to have the operation done. A transsexual clinic did exist in Pretoria at the H.F. Verwoerd Hospital, but then gay people, they couldn't socialize in public because homosexualism was still criminal in South Africa, even beyond the fall of Stonewall in 1969. It didn't blow over to South Africa until late in the 70s, early 80s. Yes, there were people that had the operation done because a transsexual clinic had sprung up. But it was really initially just meant for experimenting and seeing whether such operations could be successful or not. But then gay chaps abused it. They forget what made them gay in the first instance, that one gentleman was attracted to another, one man was attracted to another. But to be accepted socially, one had to become a woman, because then they could walk in the street and hold hands and kiss one another. But they forgot what actually made them homosexual in the first instance. And this resulted in many of them committing suicide. There was a very high building in Pretoria those days, the Pointons building, where every now and then you'd hear of a man that jumped off the roof. And it caused a lot of dissension in the first place. And secondly, of course, a lot of heart sore. I was born with the stamp of being gay. Although I knew I wasn't gay, as I grew up and I became more educated about life, I knew I had to be a woman. I was born in the body of a man, but I had the psyche of a woman. I could more easily chat with women about female things than socialize with a man. I knew nothing about motor cars or engines or race or rugby or sport and athletics and that type of stuff. It didn't appeal to me at all. Rather give me some knitting or crocheting and cooking something in the kitchen, that type of thing is what appealed to me. But that, of course, isn't the only thing that should appeal to you. You have to now consider yourself, how do you feel about the opposite sex? How do you feel about a man? How do you feel about a woman? And I knew from the age of 3 plus that I had to be a woman. I was attracted to males, but not as a male. I had to wear a dress. I had to wear high-heeled shoes. I had to look and be a woman who could have intercourse with a man in the normal way or accepted way of how a marriage is consummated. But the only way that that could be done is with an operation. And in the middle of the Karoo, you didn't even know of such an operation, never mind having been able to get it done. You read in the books about Christine Jorgensen, for example, who had it done. And, oh gosh, so there is a way that you can be helped. But how are you going to get to Norway to get an operation done?
Yeah,
that's not.
yeah.
So eventually, when I started working and joined the bank in Pretoria, which is very far from the Karoo, I encountered this transsexual clinic. I was told about it, but I was told about it by the homosexual community with whom I identified and who accepted me and were friends with me and helped me and told me about the transsexual clinic and introduced me to the people. I tell you, I was just in the right place at the right time with the right friends. And I really am, to this day, very grateful that it took place.
What is that distinction, and how do you know distinction, or how do you draw the distinction between the gay man that grows up and recognizes himself or herself, gay man, gay woman, as gay, as homosexual, and where's the line drawn where it's, no, I'm not gay, I'm not a homosexual, I am a woman, I'm just born in a wrong body?
I'm not a doctor, I'm not a psychologist or anything like that. But I'm told that when you are born, the baby already has the brain development of, for example, somebody who is gay. It's not a nature that influences it outside of the womb. It's already established inside the womb. That is how one contends it to be. Whether it actually is true or not, I don't know how it can be proved. And whether it indeed can be proved. But that is how it's accepted by the majority, that it's already done inside. There was no influence from outside that made people gay.
Yeah.
So eventually, once into the world and you started having your own mind and you've been able to speak and understand and get the gist of things, you realized, but there's something in my body that isn't a boy and isn't gay. Gay is somebody totally different from somebody like I am. I knew from my early days I needed to be a woman. To be happy, I had to be a woman.
At what point, I'm trying to, the line I'm trying to draw is, when do you identify?
Where do you change your mind?
What's the point that you say, look, I'm not gay, I'm actually really, truly a woman?
Look, let's put it this way. As a child, your parents or grandparents say, don't look the other way. It's just a phase the child is going through. It's just a phase. That was conception for them at the time. And that was, you were indoctrinated into thinking the same thing. But as you grew older, and especially when you entered puberty, you realize that really it's not a phase. There is something that really is wrong with you. It's psychological. There is something that is wrong with you because psychologically you look and approach things as a woman. You want to be a woman. You are not a woman. You are very, very unhappy within yourself. And you need help. Somebody must do something. They must either give you a slap against the head and make you think properly, or they must help you to resolve your problem. And as I say again, I was in a very small town community in the Karoo. I had to go to the army. I had to endure all the conflict of having to be in conscripted army days, those days, and had to share bungalows with men. And I was a very, very shy person. But they didn't know any better themselves those days, and thought I was gay, and I was a morphe, and I was ascribed all the adjectives that they could think of, which makes you that ridicules you. But after that, I was posted to a position in Daar, where I befriended a lot of elderly ladies. And in the evenings, we'd get together and do handiwork like crocheting or knitting or things like that. And to them, it was quite foreign that a young boy or man would want to do this type of thing. And one night, I actually even dressed up to show them what I looked like as a woman. And I knocked on the door of the one, and I'm looking for so-and-so. They didn't recognize me. And eventually I told them who I am. And they were totally aghast. They couldn't believe it's me. But they told me it's against the law. I've got to seek assistance from the medical profession. Now, the doctor there was, because Daar was a railway junction for all the trains moving around South Africa. And there was a railway doctor, Dr. Ferreira, that I was referred to. And he said, look, this is something far more difficult. I'm not able to handle this myself. But he put me in his own car and took me down to Port Elizabeth, where I saw a psychiatrist on his ticket. And the psychiatrist then said that I was transsexual. I'd never heard the word before. The word didn't mean anything to me, but it made me very, very happy that he didn't say I'm homosexual. I'm transsexual. Now, the concept of being transsexual, I had to need to understand. The doctor took me back to the Ari, stopped in Graaff-Reinet to tell my mother what the result was of this interlude with the psychiatrist. Of course, my mother was very much upset because she thought she was the reason for it. My mother and father were divorced. She was the sole parent. And this doctor then arranged for me to come to Cape Town. I was transferred to Cape Town to see a professional doctor who looked at sex change operations or to make you into a man. I never went to him. I made friends with a medical student who lived across the road from where I was boarding. And he gave me 6 testosterone injections. And he says, this is now going to make you into a man.
Can I just interrupt you here? And how old are you now? This is post-military or
Yeah, it's
during?
post-military. I was about 18, 19.
Okay, okay.
And then I'm not quite sure of the age, but it was round about the 19, let's put it that way. Then nothing happened. I was just still me. Everybody, as I walked down the gardens to work in the mornings, everybody would look at you because you looked different. Somehow, the way you walked or the way you sat, the way you talked, something was different.
Yeah.
Everybody could see through you. You were not what you were meant to be. And it's not that I dressed differently. I dressed in a suit and a tie, and I carried an attaché case. I did what I needed to do. I worked at the magistrate's office at the time. And
Is this back, Elise, is this back in De Aard that you're talking
no,
about?
no, I was transferred from De Aard to Cape Town to come and see this doctor. Instead of going to him, I had met a medical student who gave me these injections. I was too scared to go to Professor Pimstone, to be quite frank, because I didn't have money. You don't have that type of money to have operations done.
Yeah.
How are you going to finance it?
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't know there was a difference between an ordinary hospital, a private hospital, and an academic hospital. You are very ignorant of life. You were very ignorant about sex. You were totally naive about what could be done to assist you to become a whole person. From the age of 3, I knew something was wrong with me. I would pray. I would say, please help me. Please tell me what is wrong with me. Is there medicine I can take? Is there anything that can make me a proper man? Is there anything that can make me a proper woman? Is there a solution to my problem? Or is there not a solution? You know, that quagmire of thoughts went through your mind all your schooling life.
Yeah. And does
People,
that result in a very lonely and emotionally depressed and sad
it did.
child?
It did, which is when the time that I excelled in my music lessons, because every break time at school, instead of being ridiculed as being different, they didn't speak about you being gay or anything like that. In those days, I think the children then still were naive themselves, but they called you, for example, a morphie or something like that, that you weren't happy about. Then I'd lock myself at break times into the music room and practice my scales and exam pieces that I played and that type of thing, and just withdrew from social society at school. But then there were also periods in which you had to participate with the class, that you couldn't withdraw, which is, it was very difficult.
You're a child of 8, 9, 10, 11. You're going into puberty. Do you ever have, and I'll just throw a lot of stuff out there and you can pick it up. Do you develop romantic feelings towards boys, for example? Do you have an inclination of wanting to dress more feminine? I'm not only talking about your physical expression of how you walk and how you talk and how you use your hands, etc., etc. I'm talking about, do you yearn to wear a dress, for example, or to beautify lipstick or things like that? All the things that we would associate with femininity or being a woman. Would you be
Yes,
attracted, drawn to that,
you,
experiment with that, play with that, make that part of your even only in your hidden private moments?
no, not in the hidden private moments, because you were always scared of being caught out. Remember, you're a child. I just want to tell you one little snippet. Around about the age 4, 5, I would play with my tricycle and my sister's christening gown, spread all over myself, and drove around on the tricycle. I'd steal the table nets off my grandmother's table, stick them into my pants, pick flowers, and go to the neighbor, who was very well disposed towards me, and play Here Comes the Bride. I had the very big yearning to be a bride.
Yeah.
And they'd laugh about it, because they knew I was different. But you asked me what went on in my mind. Had I any inclination for men? because, as I say, sex was totally taboo. One didn't talk about it those days. I knew it. I was attracted to men, but there was no romance whilst I was a boy.
Mm.
I knew that I was fascinated by the same sex, but I had reached a closed door. I couldn't do anything about it. For the means of this talk, as I say, I didn't even know what homosexuality was.
Yeah.
To be quite frank, I was in matric already when one of my fellow scholars actually told me what masturbation is. Mm-hmm. I'd not even known what that is. Mm-hmm. So I was very backward as far as manly things were concerned. I was forced to do woodwork at school. I was forced to do things that I didn't want to do. But you were a child. You couldn't back down. I remember it was at a time when a parent or a teacher's word was law. If a teacher said pick up the paper, you had to pick up the paper. You had to not bend over forwards, which most boys would do. You'd want to crouch down and pick it up very demurely from the ground, but you couldn't do that. You had to compel yourself to bend down as well, to do it like other boys would do.
You tried to act out male mannerisms and things like
yes,
that.
You'd emulate yourself in that fashion to please others. One was very much indoctrinated and manipulated by society then. The social order really reigned the day. And it was very difficult. If I think about it today, I don't know how I survived that time. Although I was painful, yes. I sometimes considered, wouldn't it be better to actually take my own life? Mm. But, I mean, that itself is going to cause such a lot of stress in a small community. I couldn't consider the thought. My mother would be ashamed. My grandparents would be ashamed that if I did something like that. So when the army presented itself...
Just here again, also battle against that. You brought up in a very Christian home. Religion obviously plays a big part in your life.
Yes, it did.
Did you, as a young child now, while you have all of this, what you feel and what you truly are inside yourself, but also it's not accepted by society, it's rejected by society, so you try to conform. Did you pray to God and say, God, please make me other than what I am?
Please solve my problems. But you couldn't rebel, a form of rebellion against parents or grandparents. You couldn't ascribe it to God himself. Mm-hmm. Although it actually came from there, if you consider you grew up in a Christian home. Everything revolved around the Bible. So if you tried to do battle against the norms those days, you would certainly have been, I think, you would have been trodden on by society. And of course, you didn't want to be. You needed some expression or form of love in some or other way. I had that in buckets full from my mother and grandparents. I did. I was loved very much. But you look for it also from the public's point of view, from your fellow students at school. You look for acceptance. You look for people who like you just for who you are. Yeah. But because you didn't even know yourself who you are, you couldn't find fault with them.
Your relationship with your father, with other male members in your family?
Well, as I say, my mother was divorced very early in my life. I was 5 years old, but she married, and I think I was the cause of it, a further 3 times. to always present a male figure in the house
Mm-hmm.
to see whether I'd identify with the male figure. But unfortunately, she made the wrong choice every time she married. And it ended in divorce all these times whilst I was still at school.
Yeah, yeah. And how were you accepted or not accepted, rejected by these male figures?
I was never accepted by them. They were
And you
always...
felt that you knew it, you understood that that was the case.
Well, I perceived it to be the case. It was never, ever, I was no form of rejection from my mother at all. But these stepfathers couldn't handle me.
Mm-hmm.
They continued to try to influence her to think differently about me. But what was she to do about it? What did she need to do for me to change my mind as to what I perceived myself to be? What can a mother do? What can a grandfather do except taking to the doctor to see if I can be quite crude now and say whether the child's balls have dropped or not. You know, that type of thing. That's not, it wasn't a known thing. It wasn't an accepted thing. Society, it was a new thought process that was sticking out its head. Like today, you know, if you consider the past 20 years in current life, transgender, as a matter of fact, has come out of their corner where they need help themselves. They are crying for help, but they only want help halfway and not all the way. I needed to have it all the way. I needed to be a woman.
Elise, am I right if I say, and I'm imagining it, I'm also thinking, you know, I keep on going back to the R or small towns or whatever the case might be where you grew up in, the different time in which you grew up in. Are you constantly actually a little girl, frightened and in search of your identity or in search of something that is normal or happiness or whatever? Do I see a very lonely, frightened, and I really then mean it from my heart, a little girl clamped up in her own anxiety-ridden world?
As the little child who was drawn from society and didn't want to have anything to do with it, because I'm not a girl and I'm not a boy.
Mm-hmm.
I am a child. And you had the nerves and fright of a child. It was not something that just happened. It's not something you brought about yourself. It's not something that you played on somebody's emotions. You yourself were totally in turmoil. You didn't know what is going on. Why are you different? What is making you different? What's caused this? Is there any medicine that you can drink to stop this? You were absolutely causing a revolution within your own train of thought.
Yeah.
You were an embattled person and you couldn't show it. You couldn't place it on the table and say, this is my scenario, please help me. Because then you were a very weak child. And I was not a weak child. I had to live through those tribulations. I had to contend with them. I had to solve them myself. And you'll see that if you read the book, there was a very long, drawn-out process in life. I went through very many spikes and valleys. I was never, ever pretentious in any way. I was plainly a normal person. I never went or exaggerated being of female mind. I never exaggerated of being a male or trying to be male. I just knew within myself, I'm neither. I'm not a it either. But I have to do something to resolve this. And the self-determination to resolve it sent me in search of ways how I could resolve it.
When was the moment when you were able for yourself to give it a name?
That was the day that the specialist, or rather the psychiatrist in Port Elizabeth, wrote the letter to and referred me to Professor Spimstone in Graaff-Reinet.
Yeah.
And there was the word transsexualism, transsexual. And I mean, that was a word you'd never heard before. Nobody had mentioned it ever. I don't even know whether the house doctor had actually even known there was such a word either. Because I think out of Mozzie, he took me to Port Elizabeth because he wanted to find out himself what was wrong with me.
Transsexualism, transsexual, the word itself has got a whole kind of a load to it. So when do you actually begin to understand what it means, and when do you accept what it means, and when do you turn it into something positive?
That took a bit of time, but as I say, after having seen the word on the reference letter, referral letter, I went into the dictionary and tried to learn about transsexuals and transsexualism to understand. I'm not a clown, I'm not a boy, I'm not a girl, I'm not a teacher, I'm not a minister. I am a transsexual. What is it? What is it? What causes it? How am I now this funny name?
How old are you now? How old are you now when you say that?
I was
17?
18 when I came out of the army, and this was the first year after the army, end of 18, beginning of 19, that I stayed in the R and then moved to Cape Town after the referral of the psychiatrist.
And now you have to deal with this word, transsexuality, transsexualism. What does it mean?
Yes.
You have to make it you.
Correct. And my grandfather, who played a very important role in my life, because he stepped into the father's shoes that I never had at home. He and my grandmother were people of the greatest influence in my life, even more influential than my mother was in my life. She was more a sister. She looked after us very well. And I've devoted the book to her too, because she was restricted as to what she can do. As again, in the background of a small little dorpie in the middle of the Karoo. But now in Cape Town, I am now going to be exposed to the people, the learned people who knew how to treat me. They're either going to make me a man or they're going to fail at it. Those were the things I had to face. And I was too scared to take that step to be identified, to be either a male or something that nothing could be done about. I didn't want to go through life as that something that couldn't have something done about it. So when the medical student offered me the opportunity of helping me with testosterone injections, I accepted that, because that would help me not to go to that hospital and see the professor I didn't want to see. But because
in other words, taking testosterone, that would then say to me, in other words, embrace then the man.
To make me a man. It's now going to turn me into a man. But over the 6 months period that the injections were administered, nothing changed in me. Nothing changed in me. And that was when I got the opportunity.
Sorry again. So there is kind of like a situation in which everything about you and the way you live and express yourself is actually female, woman. Your inner self expresses that naturally. And the first step, or the situation you find yourself in here, is getting testosterone injections to grow you the beard of a man, to take you the opposite, in fact, of
your thought processes.
Yeah, that's confusing.
Can you imagine how confusing it was? Because this was all thought processes in your mind. Yeah. It wasn't physical. It was totally seated in your mind. And you were hoping this is salvation of sorts that's come across your way. You're going to be saved, and this guy is going to help you. I still have
there's something quite cruel about that as well. And of course, I'm looking at it back at a time in which people obviously looked at these through different eyes. But society is saying, we're going to inject you full of this testosterone and grow you a beard, and that's the
but it was also from an empathetic point of view. He felt sorry for me. And he wanted me to have a more structured life. I presented as a male, as I say, at work and in my social life. I could never wear a dress or anything like that. My attitude within myself was possibly female, but I know in my mind it was female. But you had to, at your work, you had to put forward a figure of
the
being
appearance
the
of,
Yes. If I think back to those days now in this conversation, I didn't perceive it to be difficult at the time, but it must have been very, very difficult for me. I never felt sorry for myself. Let's put it that way. I had a lot of determination to resolve the problem. I didn't feel sorry for myself, but I also didn't know how I was going to resolve the problem, what way to go about it. And one wanted to run away from yourself. You were too weak, really, to take a stand and say, well, I had to take a stand actually to reach Cape Town. But once in Cape Town, you had to take a stand. You're going to see the doctor or you're going to not see the doctor. And to please this friend of mine who gave me the injections, I didn't go to see the doctor. I pleased my grandfather at the same time. I pleased the family back home at the same time. I didn't go to the doctor.
I find it exceptionally painful. I find it very cruel, in fact, and I'm not saying it's done with any malice or anything like that, but just it's obviously ignorance, not knowing, not understanding, not having the language, not knowing what we know today. It's kind of like almost double, like trying to put you in the straitjacket of something that you're not.
Of course it was. Of course it was. But you wouldn't allow them the satisfaction of knowing that this is what they are actually doing. But you are experiencing it in your own mind as to what they're doing. It didn't cause hate. It didn't cause anything unnatural in my love for my mother and my grandparents. Nothing of that was different.
Well, because it's obviously also well-meaning to a certain extent from their point of view. Because
of course,
they are also
they loved me.
wonderfully ignorant.
But my grandfather picked one, and he says, if you go on with this, I've still got correspondence, which I actually mention in the book, is that if you are going on with the story, you've got to sever your ties with us, because we don't want to have somebody like you in the family then. And this exacerbated actually when I started attending the transsexual clinic in Pretoria. He actually just shoved me aside. He didn't want to be associated with me. Now, this was at a later stage now of just after maturity of reaching majority at age 21. It was when I went to Pretoria, and I had the operation at the age of 23. Now, for that 2-year period, I was totally rejected by him, which hurt me tremendously. As I say, he played such a vital role in my life, in my childhood, and in my young days, that he would reject me.
I want you to take me to that space in yourself when clarity came, when
it came the day when my mother was called to meet with the doctors All the doctors were together, the psychiatrist, the psychologist, the endocrinologist, the welfare officers, everybody had come together in a big office where my mother and I was brought into. And every one of them individually gave their perception and findings of me as a person to her in the presence of all the others. Everybody was there at the same time. And eventually, the psychiatrist, who was now in chief in charge, and the endocrinologist, who was going to do the operation, or who did operations, had to explain to her what the narrative is that is going to take me forward in my life. How she must accept it, how she must understand it, and how I should understand it. That it's going to physically change me to being a woman, because you can adjust the body to the mind, but you cannot adjust the mind to the body.
This is the beginning of your new life.
This is actually the crux of where it happened, when the psychiatrist said to her, the only way we can help your child is via an operation being done. And then the explanation was the mind can not adjust to the body. The body needs to be adjusted to the mind. That is where the crux of it happened, and where it to me made it quite clear as to what was wrong with me and why it could be done and how it is going to be done. And I immediately burst out in tears, because I was so happy that I was becoming a whole person. But she cried just as much. But as I say, I think she cried for other reasons.
Yeah. Did she understand? Did she, well, A, understand, and B, did she accept? Or would
yes.
that be a process?
She did. It must have been difficult for her. As I said, it must have been difficult for her. But she never moaned and groaned about it at all. She stood by me all the way. She'd ask the doctor questions, but positive questions. But I now had to live for 6 months completely and entirely as a woman at work, so that I can grow accustomed to be presenting myself as a woman. I walked around with the note from the doctor saying that I'm not masquerading as a woman in public. I am under medical assistance, what's the right word now? Attention, and I'm getting treatment. And this is part of the treatment. I have, and you've got to be living as a woman. Get accepted by the church as a member and all the type of thing. So I went to the dominee, the pastor of my church up in Sunnyside in Pretoria. And I said to him, this is now what's going to happen to me. Am I now desecrating this castle of my body, which God has prescribed to be? He said to me in so many words, there's nothing devilish about it. Do you think God would have given the doctors the knowledge to assist you if he didn't want you to be assisted? And that to me brought my thoughts to an absolute conclusion that what I was doing will not be held against me one day. But it was still a thought that was very difficult to put across.
Was it in one flood, all of this pain, all of these years of not knowing, that starts dissipating and the embrace of the birth of Elise?
It came in steps. You had to take one step at a time. It wasn't like gliding down a glacier in Switzerland. You had to take it one step at a time. I had the very good fortune with this opposition bank in 1973, at the beginning of 74, through the banking experience that I had, to be made manager of this service branch in Queenswood, and was as such the youngest female bank manager at the time. Now, that gave me a tremendous amount of confidence, which I lacked initially. I was not filled with confidence at all through this whole period of my life until then. Never mind the operation, which also gave me confidence, but there was a lot of apprehension that went hand in hand with it. Is it going to be a success? Am I going to be a whole person after it's done? Can anything go wrong? What are the physical ups and downs about it? Are you going to have fulfillment in your life? Are you going to be able to have sexual satisfaction? That was quite a thing the night before the operation, how the doctors performing the operation actually described it to me, because I was very apprehensive as to, how are you going to go through life for the rest of your life without having any sexual satisfaction? Because by then I'd known about masturbation, you'd exercised it, and you didn't want to lose that.
Yeah. Let me ask you this at this point. Why I think you are in fact such a powerful woman and you are such a remarkable woman is if one listens to what you're telling us here, the story, not only do you go through all of these personal things in your life, these deeply must be emotional, psychological struggle, new knowledge, but you also develop a career in the meantime, and you actually function within a career world to the point that you just pointed out right now, that you become, at whatever young age it was, I think you said 20, 21, or whatever the case might be, you become a young female manager or a manager in the bank as well.
Yeah, at the age of 23.
Yeah,
at the age of 23.
At least that's remarkable that you're able to do all of that stuff as well. And perhaps the thought in my mind is then what you said, this dominee said to you, God had equipped you.
I think he gave me a lot of strength.
And
he gave me the knowledge of perseverance. That if I didn't persevere, I wasn't going to win, and I'm not going to give up this battle easily. I have to win.
The pain, the struggle, the years of not knowing, of being in the middle of all of this, the darkness of it all, and then this moment, which we can legitimately call the rebirth of yourself. That whole colossal nightmare that's behind you in all of this, because I know that there must have been many, many tears, many, many dark moments. You talk about potentially moments of such despair that, you might want to take your own life or whatever the case might be. I don't have to over dramatize any of this. It is a dramatic story. What happens to all of that dark section? Does it just begin to dissipate, or is it still a process?
Totally, it dissipates. I never looked back. Never looked back. I needed to look forward. If I was going to succeed at this, it's not only the operation that's going to make me succeed. I, as a person, have got to creep out of this nutshell that I was in, and I have got to live the life of a woman. And I'm not going to be a woman if I lie around the streets. I want to be a lady. I'm not just going to be a woman.
I want to talk about the operation, how you experience all of that. I'd like us to touch on that as well. But before that, when the emergence of who you are, the finding of your identity and finding your place in this world, tell me, when you sit in the privacy of your own bedroom or house and you see your own image looking back at yourself from the mirror, and you've put on your makeup and you've put on your pretty dress, and what do you see? How did you experience
Are you talking about before the operation or after
before the
operation?
operation? Well, I talk about when the acceptance, the totality of it all. Yes, there's some hurdles still. You have to go through this operation and so on, but you're now beginning to live as a woman. You dress every day up, you get up as a woman, you go to work as a woman, you live the life of a woman.
Correct. But you always avoided looking below the navel.
Mm-hmm.
That little chap didn't do you any harm. He wasn't but he was the cause of your state of mind. But he never did you any harm. You played with him. You loved him. He was part of your body. He caused you to have all these thrills, spikes and valleys, as I call them. He was the cause of it. And
Right.
I'm now going to be destroying him. That is the thing that unnerved me to a degree.
Yeah.
Because it's a spot in my body that is going to be, it's like a mole that you're going to have removed. But this is not going to be removed. It's going to be remodeled into something that is going to be female. That was very difficult for me to understand at the time how it's going to operate, how that operation is going to succeed. But the doctors absolutely assured me that it is going to succeed. It was a different thing to look at my body in the mirror after the operation, of course. Because after the operation, you saw yourself as a complete woman. You are not this object anymore. You are a person. You are not something that shouldn't be half a person or not a quarter of a person or a total apparition of a person. You're now a person, a whole person. Doesn't matter how you got there. Remember, your chromosomes can't change. I still walk around with a prostate gland. That's my big fear in life, that I end up in hospital with prostate cancer in my dotage. Can you imagine the ridicule you'll have to endure?
It's hard for me to comment on that. I just don't know what to say. Before the operation, you're getting ready for the operation, the big days arriving. Take me into. I'm making this movie in my head now.
Okay, well, I had to go into hospital 2 days before the operation because they had to prepare me for the operation. It was mainly gastro preps for this, because for 8 days after the operation, no solids was allowed to pass through your system, only liquids, because you had the paraphernalia attached to it. The night I was in a private ward, but the general ward for women was just adjacent to that. And they knew about me, and I told them about myself. And we made friends. The day the gurney came to fetch me to take me into the theatre, all these ladies were on their elbows and waving and wishing me well on my way to the theatre.
You must have been the talk around the hospital.
Of course I was. Of course I was. At night, the nurses, before going home, they'd come and see and check that I'm happy, that I've got everything I want. One of them, and I still have the little vase today. The day I entered hospital, there was a small little blue and white Delft vase on the nightstand next to the bed, filled with yellow Madeliefis daisies, filled with yellow daisies from a nurse. Can you imagine what that meant to me?
Yeah.
Look, there are two things that, actually 3 things, from the time I was in hospital that I remember very vividly. The first thing was the day, as I've just described to you, on my way to the theatre, how all the ladies wished me well. The second thing was after my taking leave of my sister at the yellow line before I went into the theatre. I was lying in the corridor waiting to be taken in. And I said goodbye to the little chap. And I said, sorry, I'm very sorry for all the pain you're going to have to endure now. You did nothing to me, but all I can say is I'm sorry. And I shook my hands with him. I did. It sounds very childish to do that, but that's what I did. Call me old-fashioned, or as Dame Edna says, called me old-fashioned, but I mean it in a very nice way. I said goodbye to him. Because when I came out, it wasn't a him anymore, it was a she. Mm. On the operation table, I said to the doctor, please just count, because I know now it's a point of no return. I've got no pain as I'm lying here, but I know there is a lot waiting for me when I get back. The third thing that had a very, very big impression on me was that the endocrinologist, the gynae that was actually in charge of the whole operation, came to me the day after the big op and gave me more sedation because I had tremendous pain. I never ever imagined that it could be so painful. You know, the concrete and steel balls they use to dismantle tall buildings and things like that. It's like that big thing came loose and fell on my groin.
Yeah.
And you were stuck on your back for 8 days. You couldn't turn. Yeah. You couldn't sit up. You were under all types of medication to get the pain under control. But I tell you, it was very difficult for pain to be removed those days.
Yeah. Do you mind if I ask you this question? I know the first operations of this kind, I read somewhere, I didn't do any research for this chat here, but I think it was back in the 30s or the 40s already.
That's right, 1932.
So in terms of the... So just... Yeah, so in the 70s when you had this operation, the state of the science, was it relatively sophisticated to where we are today? As it, what I'm trying to say is it wasn't crude science. It was well established and people knew what they were doing.
Yes, it already was. As I say, I wasn't the first. There was a lot of exploratory work that was done prior to my being the next patient in line. Yeah, you understand? So Dr. Boot has always said I was his best example of his work. That was his words. But just the third point was that when he was in, just remember I want to talk about gender identity and so on. But the thing that played havoc with my mind was when he said, "You want to see it?" I said, "Oh God, I don't want to see it now. It is still too sore." He says, "No, I want you to see it so that I can explain to you what we've done." And I had a hand mirror, my grandmother's, that I took with me to hospital. I said, "Well, please just get yourselves out and close the curtains. I first want to look at it myself." Which I did. And I closed my eyes and I brought the hand mirror around and brought it around and until I thought it was in position and opened my eyes. And I just shouted out and started crying. I was absolutely knocked. I looked a total apparition. It was not what I'm supposed to look like. It's not going to be what I must be. That this is terrible. I was in a flux of turmoil. It wasn't a penis anymore, but it didn't resemble a vagina either. What am I now? But he explained that it's going to be some time before it actually looks what it should look like, because of all the swelling that was evident then, and all the antiseptics that were used, etc., made it a total apparition. It really was something that unsettled me very, very profoundly. But that, fortunately, was something that passed. in time.
You better keep on talking, Elise, because I'm not in a position to comment or to react or anything.
Yeah, well, they're not going to be able to read it abroad now because the book is in Afrikaans, but those days, it was not a vaginoplasty like it is done today. It was still ancient days, it's history, but it was done successfully.
Yeah.
The incision started in the perineum, and all along the ridge under the base of the penis, it went up to the frenulum, which is just below the glans, the penis. And then the skin was detached from the muscle tissue and the cartilage and blood vessels and so forth. Now you must remember all the nervous system is in the, can I call it, the head of the penis, the glans penis, all those nerves, how are those nerves all going to be reattached somewhere? But it happened because a form of clitoris was made of it. Not all of it, but some of it, as I explained initially, the 80% and 20% and 20% and 80%. The one thing that one mustn't forget, that you have a lot of sexual satisfaction from the prostate gland. And combined with the prostate gland and that portion of the clitoris, or part of a glans penis that became a clitoris, you had your satisfaction perhaps even spread over a longer period of time than a man usually has it.
Yeah. I tend to want to say too much information at this point, Elise Bishop.
Okay.
That is where I am at the moment with this, but I'm
embarrassing you.
I don't know what to say at this point, except to say that, okay, I imagine the first look in the mirror at what it is, I could imagine it was probably a little bit of a shock to the system. I guess the question would be, when it all is now settled and done and normalized, and
okay, now I can tell you,
are you then a happy woman at the end of the day? You've taken me this way, so let me
look. Let me tell you what happened. After I was discharged from hospital at the end of December, I had to go and recover at my mother's home in Port Elizabeth. And I had an uncle and aunt who had a farm in the Graaff-Reinet district, who had retired to Uitenhage. And they were like parents to me too, because every school holiday was spent on the farm. Now they were retired and lived in Uitenhage. And Aunt Maxie said to me, she wants to see me. So my mother and I went across from Port Elizabeth to Uitenhage. And everybody greeted me very friendly. It was the first time that they are seeing me now as a woman. So it must have been a shock to their systems. But Aunt Maxie then said to me, I want you to show me. and she and she and her daughter-in-law accompanied me to the spare bedroom.
Yeah. The wounds were relatively healed now, and
relatively, but now for 6 months after the operation, you have to wear something that resembles, excuse now, it's a dildo, something that resembled it, which you had to wear full time with hormone medication. What
would be the purpose of this? Is it to
elasticize the skin of the scrotum, which was utilized to line the vagina, and also to stretch it, because you had to have elasticity, a tremendous. Remember, you're going to have penetrations now. You've never had it before, and you need the depths of that. So for 6 months, you had to wear the dildo. So I had to go into the bathroom quickly to remove that.
How could you walk around with this? I mean, is
You,
it
you
some
went
kind
with those donut cushions. You had to carry it all around you with you, so that when you sat, there was some space for it to actually go down. Otherwise, it would have been the most painful experience under the sun to sit down.
Yeah.
Anyhow, so I took it out in the bathroom and hid it away in case any of them wanted to come and wash their hands, and had to go to the spare room. And there opened my legs for inspection. On Maxie put on her glasses, her spectacles, and she looked at it like this, and she twisted, and she looked to her daughter-in-law. Does yours look like this? Because it looks just like mine. She looked at it. She gave me a look again. And she never said a word and just turned around and walked. She's totally satisfied that it was a success. Now, if that came from an old lady who she was in her 70s, early 70s, when this happened, I knew it must have been a success.
Yeah.
Even if it came in such a crude way.
Yeah.
I was happy that if it pleased her, I'm okay.
Yeah. And then obviously the body heals.
There's a lot of things of interest that happened during the time the body healed, and etc., etc. But that is going to embarrass you again. So I'm not going to embarrass you.
Well, you can lift the curtains open a tiny bit. If there's anything in particular that you think you should bring to my attention and the attention of the audience.
You had to have, as I say, the elasticity was the big thing that had to be achieved as far as penetration goes. So you had to have that little bit of PT as often as possible. Now, where'd you suddenly get 50 men to service you 3 times a week?
Okay,
You're not there. You get it? So that 6 months period of my life, I really felt I was a prostitute, because you jumped at every possibility where a man showed interest. Cast him aside. Fortunately,
no, hold on. You're saying some amazing stuff here now, and I don't want to miss this opportunity as well. You've actually had this surgery done. I'm getting the impression, and I'm going to put it also in very crude language now because I'm not a scientist, but I'm getting the impression you got to train it in a way. And if I talk about it, I talk about the new yourself, vagina. You have to train it in a way in which it remains flexible and receptive and open. It doesn't grow close. Is that how
Yes, because there was a cavity made for between the what you call the bladder and the anus. There was a story made.
Okay, and the body's natural inclination would be to close that cavity. Is that what you're saying?
That's right, and it had to remain open, and it had to get regular exercise to maintain depth. Okay. Otherwise, it would fall in on itself. So there was, that's why you had to wear this dildo all the time, or what resembled a dildo. It was open at one end for circulatory services, and you had to take this out every time. And the more often you were able to have sex properly, the less you needed to wear this painful apparatus. So of course you would.
So you're literally saying this is 24 hours on the clock. You're literally saying that you've got this a
story that you've got to wear for 24 hours a day for 6 months. Now that was like a sentence to me. Okay. A sentence in jail. So which way out of the pain would you actually choose? You're going to choose something that is going to be pleasurable or supposedly pleasurable, as opposed to something that is causing pain. But where are you going to get these instruments that are going to be?
So are you saying to me that the doctor's recommendation at that point of your life is, well,
Is
you're going to have to get
the more often you have it with a man,
Yeah.
the quicker you're going to be able to discard this story.
And I mean, and now I'm being very crude now. You're doing that obviously because it's medically required of you to do so. But does it at the very least put a smile on your face as well at the same time?
Well, I know what you're
You've put me onto this trajectory now, I'm afraid. So
let's put it this way.
Yeah.
The first time around, you start at the bottom end of the bed and you reverse all the time because you're scared it's going to hit you through the roof. I was very apprehensive at that first encounter. And the doctors also said to me, remember now in this first 6 months, something can't go wrong. So you must tell a man that you've undergone such an operation, because he can actually perhaps murder you because you've led him around the bush or something.
Yeah.
And that was the most difficult thing for me to do. And the very first time was the electrician who came to fix my stove. And as he was working on the stove, I saw the crack at the back. And I thought, oh, I'm going to now open a bottle of wine and I'm going to twist you around my little finger. And I did.
Yeah.
And I did. I didn't know him from a bar of soap. And he was the one who fell for me. Because before I could take my shoes off, he was already without his pants. So we actually maneuvered ourselves into the bedroom, and and that was a very dramatic scenario when I had to tell him, look, I have, and I couldn't get the words out of my mouth. And he thought that I was wanting to know whether he's got, if y'all know what the English here, whether he's got a safeguard in his pocket. And he said, I said, don't worry, I can't become pregnant. Then I had to tell him the story. But I mean, he was already halfway on the job before I could complete the whole sentence. So he finished up. But I was too nervous, and as I say, I was very nervous that it's going to go through the roof of the vagina. So I was slipping up against the headboard of the bed already. Anyhow, this is now the first time around. Nothing happened as far as I'm concerned. It was around the third or the fourth time with a young student who became a very big romance in my life. That was the first time that I could take the corner. It was a little bit skewed insofar that I was apprehensive. Is it now really that? Is it going to be? And it was a bit deflated. It was there, but it was deflated. I thought it would be more severe. It would be more intense. But the fifth or the sixth, when I grew accustomed to him and I had no more fear within me, it improved. And it really became an absolute pleasure. I could have it all day long.
All right. Let me cap this and try to get a decent question in the point of all of this.
I've given you all my bedroom secrets.
Graphic descriptions that I've received here now is the point, though, on a serious note, and that's what I'm required to do, Elise, is the operations then, and I would imagine now much improved, though, does at the end of the day, for us all people that do not know this, does actually culminate in
the same result.
Well, I'm trying to find the right words now. So it's successful. You are able to fully sexually express yourself as a woman, and Help me out.
Of course you can. I'm 73 years old, so of course you don't do it so often now anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to be buried one day with the thought that this is a woman who couldn't get enough sex in her life or something like that. Yeah, it's dissipated to some extent, insofar that I'm not very active any longer. I'm in a relationship which also doesn't require so much that one should be. And I'm content. If one is content with life, to me, I see it this way, that if you're content, it covers the whole spectrum of happiness.
Yeah.
Because if you have total satisfaction, you don't need anything more.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. I'm pushing it again. That's another part of this whole thing about one's sexual identity that's so fascinating, because it really is. It is really the spectrum of sexuality or sexual expression is just ginormously broad. Because, and this is on the one hand kind of funny as well, you've become a woman, and to ultimately in your life to fall in love with another woman.
Yes. At the age of 40.
Another twist to your fascinating story and bits and bobs of your fascinating sex life that you've now shared with us as well.
The LGBTQ I've experienced them all. But the fact that it's lasted 34 years must speak volumes. Because, and
you say it lasts, is that a reference now to the physical construction, or are you talking about?
No, the relationship. That the relationship has been going for 34 years.
I was just wondering what you were referring to when you're saying that it lasts for so long. And I translated that immediately to post-operation.
You've got one track.
It's got a lot of good wear at the moment as well, Elise.
But I mean, to have been accepted by somebody who's gay, a lesbian. I'd hate that word. I don't like to use that word. They're gay. And to be accepted by a gay woman.
Yeah.
Full knowledge of who and what I am.
Oh, that's actually the best compliment you could possibly get, I would imagine.
Can you think that? Because I was again in turmoil and went to see a psychologist this time in Vlakte, which is quite a distance away from Stellenbosch. And I said to her, am I going mad? Because I never wanted to fall for a woman all my life. I have now suddenly developed this love for a woman.
Yeah.
And she quoted to me from Kyle Gibran and said, if love beckons, follow it, for love beckons not twice. And I did. I followed it. And I'm glad I did, because I've experienced the most marvelous partner one could imagine for 34 years already.
What do we take out of that more, and I'll put us on a bit of a different path here, philosophically, about that which love is? I mean, isn't it remarkable that you go through all of this in your life? You become the woman that you've always been. Science allows you to take these steps and so on. You have, I would imagine, successful heterosexual relationships, whatever one wants to define that as. And ultimately, your heart is conquered by a woman, and you follow that love, and I would imagine express that love both emotionally, spiritually, but also physically. You
wouldn't now know of it because it's in the book. But I was actually on the verge of marriage with a man who defected from Czechoslovakia when they had the uprisings in 1963. And 4 days before we were to be married, he was killed in a car accident.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Then another one was the one who serviced me for the 6-month period. It was an Italian, very over-endowed Italian, but he was too young. He was a student.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to infringe on his life. And we had feelings for one another. But I put a stop to it because I knew that him being Italian, it's going to be a problem. And because of my mother having been divorced so many times, I didn't want to follow in her footsteps as far as marriage was concerned. Although at a later stage in life, I was engaged to somebody and married him within a matter of a week. Because I was after the flat that he was vacating, he'd been transferred to Queenstown. I wanted the flat. And I've always wanted to walk down the church's aisle to the wedding march being hammered out on the organ. So I took it. And that was another achievement of mine. But let me tell you, that's the one black spot that I have. And that is the marriage was never consummated, because once he took off his pants and I saw his backside covered in freckles, I ran. I just grabbed the top of a layer of the cake, and barefoot in a wedding frock, I was running up Cape Road to my mother's place. I wasn't going to lie for that man. It was a business transaction. It wasn't a marriage.
And let's get to the sort of the closing down of our chat here. Tell me about the woman you met and your realization that it sounds so weird to say it, that in fact one would be able to. Well, I imagine that you are lesbian then. I mean,
Well, I hate to use that word.
or is that the spectrum of sexuality? I mean, I'm trying to put more sort of philosophical words in my mouth now, but
this is why I say I've lived the full acronym of LGBTQR, because I'm as queer as a nutcase you can get. Let's put it that way. I'm now joking about it, but be serious about it. When you've now heard my story right from the start to the end, please God, that's not the end yet, but you've heard my full experience, really, in a couple of words. Yes, the past 34 years have been the happiest of my life.
Yeah.
We grew for 34 years. We went through many ups and downs. I helped her through the death of both her parents. My mother had died just a year before we met. So happiness really revolved around her family. And being very close to where we live, I relied on them very much. Some of them, because they also were a very old-fashioned Afrikaans family, who had never been subjected to, first of all, their daughter never got out of the cupboard ever whilst they lived. So it was a big secret. I initially had to be a big secret, but I am an open person. I don't want to lie. To live a life of lies, I think would be terrible. I was, in a certain way, forced to do that as a child, and that made me nearly mad. So as a grown-up, I didn't want to have such a life. I had to be upfront about who and what I am. People accepting me must accept me with open arms, and those who don't must reject me and say, cheers, I don't want to have anything to do with you. Thank the Lord, whether they were truthful within themselves or unto me, I don't know, but I never had one rejection. Not one. There were many who didn't welcome you with open arms, and I'm reflecting upon the family. You know, my grandfather, he married another woman after my grandmother died, and her whole family didn't want to have anything to do with me. I didn't exist as far as they were concerned. And this, to a certain degree, was with Miranda's family, not as so very rigid, the same case. They didn't reject you, they accepted you, but you never knew whether it was a real acceptance and whether it was just acceptance for Miranda's sake.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Her mother was the only one who actually said to me, she loves me. And this was very close to the end of her life. Her father had died 10 years earlier. And when he was 2 weeks before he died, we'd gone down to Hermanus to visit. And he took my arm in his hand when we said goodbye. And he said, please, please promise me you'll always look after my daughter. And 2 weeks later, he was dead.
Yeah, yeah.
And I promised him that. So whatever happens, up and down life's God here in at this point in my life, I've been able to keep my word. Even though I don't want to end on such a negative note, but there is a negative note which I must tell you about. This family that my grandfather married into, a granddaughter of his, stole my mate for 6 months. And that is the second black spot in my life, that I actually did get divorced and followed in my mother's footsteps, but just for 6 months. But it happened. And they were back together ever since, as if those 6 months didn't happen at all. But that caused me more pain, those 6 months, than the operation itself. The operation was physical pain, but the 6 months that we were apart was emotional pain. I stayed in our flat adjacent to the house so that I could see her, because to grab 30 years of my life and cast it aside as if I'd never lived it, I couldn't do. I couldn't endure the thought of not seeing her every day in my life. So when she'd take the car out of the garage, I'd peer through the curtains so I could just see her. I saw her. I heard her. And then I had got COVID. And COVID is what brought us together again, because I had nobody to care for me apart from her. And she had an obligation because she was all alone. A friend of ours who had first lived in the flat, this is all in a period of 6 months. She had thrombosis. She died. She couldn't support Miranda anymore. Miranda and this granddaughter of my grandfather had separated within that 6 month period. And I was on my own. So that Christmas, each of us were on our own, all alone. And just after the Christmas, in round about March, I contracted COVID. And I was really very, very ill. I was in hospital for 6 weeks and in a convalescence home for 2 weeks. I had to learn to walk again and to learn to write. I still battle with putting in my contact lenses or putting in my earrings. I'm healthy now. Apart from, and another thing was, at the age of 36, I contracted epilepsy. Although it is not a petit mal, it's petit grand mal, it's petit mal, the junior of the two, the lesser one of the two. But I am under total management. Everything is under control. I'm happy with my life. It's not the end of the life that I would have wanted to have, because we won't get married again. And that to me was the line at the bottom of my story that I was proudest of, that I had got married. Because that was the one thing that meant the most to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It really was the one thing that meant the most.
Elise, thanks for sharing all of this with me. Let's make one little diversion. Um, you've lived an incredible life, and you're still living I think you're a celebrated woman in South Africa today. You've written this, your life story. Not, it's been noted as one of the most, what is the another award you've got now? It's been named one of the 10 most loved stories
The past
in
century.
of the past
Autobiography.
century, which is remarkable. Um, just give me a glimpse, and you do a lot within activism today as well, within the LGBTQ, I don't know, the whole thing, community.
Well, no, not quite as large as you perhaps state. I speak out for them. I do
Mhm.
believe. I do believe to each his own. They have the right to make their own choices, just as I had a right to make mine. I don't perceive myself to be transgender. I was transsexual. Transgender and I are very, very close to one another, but yet we are separate.
Mhm.
My chromosomes can never change. My prostate gland can most probably be removed or whatever one day if I contract cancer. I don't know, because the urinary tube, what is that, the urethra
Mhm.
passes through that there, so it's very difficult gland to remove. So I have that, and the chromosomes are the same. Sure, but I am a complete person. I don't want to be a halfway person. I don't want to be somebody who can state today they're a tomato and tomorrow they're a quince, and then go to the registry office and get their gender changed, and to have all these binary and non-binary and pronouns and non-pronouns and all these funny names, um, and dress up ridiculously. A guy walking around with his hairy chest and a huge beard in a frock and high heels. I don't know what they are really ridiculing themselves in a large degree. But as I say, I don't condemn them. I have no right to condemn them. But that is not to me, individually me, acceptable. I wanted to be a woman, and I am a woman, and I appear to be a woman. I present myself as a woman, and I am a lady. I'm not one of those who run around and say they are a woman and they're not, or say they are a male and they are not. If I had to go through all the pain to become what I am, they can too. Otherwise, they are not what they want to be.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
my contention. That is my perception and contention, and mine alone.
In conclusion, Elise, and thank you for that once again, is what I also hear you say is that, and I talk about the totality of our discussion now, which had gone quite a few directions. What I take out of it for myself, and help me out if I don't say it right, is that it's not about the label. It's not about the pronoun. It is about the acceptance of the other in whatever he,
You
she,
know,
her, his individual expression might be.
correct.
That am I saying it right?
It is, as far as I'm concerned, the crux of the matter. It's your personality, it's your person, it's what you present, it's what you stand for, and it's what makes you likable. Integrity and steadfastness is something that cannot be bought with money. Love rules the world, and love has ruled my life. If you cannot give it wholeheartedly, 100%, 100% of the time, you might as well not love yourself.
On
And that to me is my message. And so on that note, I say goodbye to you.
Yeah, I get it. And I really want to say to you, thank you very much for just what was a fantastically interesting, fabulously funny and wonderful discussion with you. I am glad I know you. We've known each other now for the last 2 years or so, long distance relationship, a digital relationship we have. I carry you close in my heart, and I want to thank you very, very much indeed for giving me this, allowing me this sharing.
I hope it reaches,
life.
especially
Thank
now
you
that
very
we've spoken in English, we spoke Afrikaans before. I do hope that it reaches the hearts and minds of more people who are English speaking, and that they find some solace in the fact that there are people who can help them, and they must just go in search of that help. That's all.
Yeah. But I think mostly, and I think that's really what I take away from this discussion with you, is mostly your right to be who you are, not to enforce that on the world, but your own acceptance, your loving of who you are. And I would imagine to family, parents, mothers, fathers, friends, is we must learn and accept the other in exactly the way the other finds him, herself in him, her, whatever.
Their acceptance and support is absolutely vital.
Yeah. Elise, thank you very much.
My pleasure.